Welcome to Easter Island, a place of mystery, silence, and giant stone guardians. The Moai have watched over this remote island for centuries, witnessing human ambition, devotion, and the secrets of a lost civilization. Today, we'll uncover their story, how they were carved, transported, and what they tell us about resilience, belief, and the balance between people and nature. Sit back, relax, and let the journey begin. In the vast stillness of the South Pacific Ocean, far from the crowded routes of modern travel and thousands of kilometers from any major continent, a small triangular island rises gently from the water. The air carries the soft scent of salt and distant rain. Waves move slowly against black volcanic rocks, creating a steady rhythm that feels almost like breathing. At night, the sky opens into a deep field of stars, clearer than in most places on Earth, and the silence becomes so complete that even the wind feels careful not to disturb it. This island is known to the world as Easter Island, and to its people as Rapa Nui. Scattered across its hills and coastlines stand enormous stone figures, their faces calm, their expressions timeless, their eyes once filled with coral and obsidian. These statues are called the Moai, and for centuries they have guarded a mystery that continues to quietly unfold in the imagination of anyone who gazes upon them. When European explorers first arrived in the early 18th century, they could hardly believe what they were seeing. An isolated island with limited trees and modest resources was somehow home to hundreds of massive stone monuments, some taller than a house and heavier than several elephants combined. The statues stood on carefully constructed stone platforms called ahu, many facing inland rather than toward the sea, as if watching over invisible villages that had long since faded into memory. The explorers recorded their confusion in journals and sketches, wondering how such a small population could have carved, transported, and erected monuments of such scale without metal tools, wheels, or large animals. From that moment forward, Easter Island became one of the world's great archaeological puzzles. Long before the arrival of outsiders, Polynesian navigators crossed immense stretches of open ocean using only stars, wind patterns, and the movement of waves as their guides. According to oral tradition, a leader named Hotu Matue guided his people across the sea to settle on Rapa Nui. They brought seeds, animals, and deep spiritual beliefs that shaped how they understood the world. In those early centuries, the island was not the barren landscape seen today. Tall palm forests covered much of the land, birds filled the skies, and fertile soil supported crops. The ocean provided fish and shellfish, while the forests offered wood for canoes, tools, and shelter. Life was demanding but balanced, guided by respect for ancestors and the invisible forces believed to flow through all living things. Central to Rapa Nui belief was the concept of mana, a spiritual energy that could be inherited from ancestors and strengthened through honor, ritual, and remembrance. Leaders and respected elders were thought to carry especially powerful mana, capable of protecting the community and ensuring prosperity. When such individuals died, their presence was not believed to disappear. Instead, their spirit continued to watch over the living. The Moai statues were created as physical vessels for this ancestral power. Each statue represented an honored ancestor whose gaze would safeguard the land, the crops, and the people themselves. That is why most Moai face inland, standing as silent guardians rather than coastal sentinels. The creation of a Moai began at a volcanic quarry known as Reino Raraku. The rock there is a compacted volcanic ash called tuff, soft enough to carve with stone tools but strong enough to endure centuries of weather and wind. Skilled carvers shaped each statue directly from the rock face, beginning with the front details before cutting the figure free from the cliff. Even today, hundreds of unfinished statues remain scattered across the quarry, frozen in various stages of completion, offering a quiet glimpse into the working rhythm of a vanished world. The carving process demanded patience, coordination, and deep ceremonial respect, as each statue was not merely art but a sacred responsibility. Once a Moai was completed, the greatest challenge began, moving it across rugged terrain to its designated ahu platform. Some statues weighed more than 70 tons, yet they traveled several kilometers without modern machinery. Scholars have proposed multiple theories. One suggests that wooden rollers and sleds were used to drag the statues forward. Another proposes that ropes allowed teams of people to rock the statues side to side, gradually walking them upright across the landscape. Local legends tell a more poetic version, claiming that the Moai walked on their own, guided by the mana of the ancestors. Regardless of the method, the achievement remains extraordinary and speaks to the organizational skill and shared devotion of the Rapa Nui people. As generations passed, the demand for more statues grew. Competing clans sought to honor their ancestors with ever larger monuments, believing greater size meant stronger spiritual protection. Forests were cut to supply materials for transport and daily survival. Over time, the island's trees became scarce. Soil erosion increased, birds disappeared, and fishing became more difficult as canoe materials dwindled. Food shortages followed, placing strain on social structures and fueling conflict between groups. In periods of unrest, some Moai were deliberately toppled, their once proud faces pressed into the earth as symbols of broken power and shifting belief. Standing among the fallen statues today, one can sense the layered passage of time. The wind brushes gently across their weathered surfaces, carrying the sound of distant waves and quiet echoes of human effort long forgotten. These figures witnessed ambition, cooperation, faith, struggle, and transformation. They remain not only as monuments of stone, but as silent storytellers of human resilience and limitation. In moonlight, their shadows stretch across the grass like long memories, reminding us that civilizations rise and fall, yet their questions remain. This is the beginning of a slow journey into the heart of the Moai mystery, where archaeology meets legend, and quiet reflection reveals the fragile balance between humanity and nature. As the rhythm of the ocean continues in the background and the night sky holds steady above, the story unfolds gently, inviting the listener deeper into the calm and timeless world of Easter Island. As dawn slowly rises over Rapa Nui, the soft light reveals the island's contours in gentle layers of gold and shadow. The slopes of extinct volcanoes stretch toward the horizon, and narrow grasslands move quietly in the wind. From above, the island appears small and fragile, surrounded by endless water, yet within its boundaries lies a complex history of navigation, survival, and innovation. Long before maps carried its name, Polynesian voyagers mastered the art of ocean travel with extraordinary precision. They read the movement of swells beneath their canoes, observed the flight paths of birds, memorized the rising and setting positions of stars, and trusted generations of inherited knowledge. Their journeys were not accidental wanderings but deliberate explorations guided by patience and courage. It was through this remarkable system that the first settlers reached the remote shores of Rapa Nui, carrying with them a culture shaped by both discipline and imagination. Life on the island demanded careful adaptation. Freshwater sources were limited to crater lakes and seasonal rain catchments. The soil, born from volcanic ash, could be fertile when protected but vulnerable to erosion when exposed. Early settlers developed stone gardens, using carefully arranged rocks to preserve moisture and shield crops from wind. Sweet potatoes, bananas, sugarcane, and taro formed the foundation of their diet, complemented by fishing along the rocky coastline. Communities organized themselves around extended families and clans, each responsible for managing its land and honoring its ancestors. The rhythm of daily life followed the cycles of sun, moon, and ocean, encouraging a deep awareness of natural balance. Spiritual life shaped nearly every aspect of social behavior. The invisible presence of ancestors was believed to guide success in fishing, farming, and leadership. Ceremonies reinforced respect for genealogy, memory, and duty. The Moai statues were more than symbolic representations, they were believed to channel protective energy into the living world. When a statue was raised upon its stone platform, rituals were performed to awaken its spiritual presence. Coral eyes were placed into carved sockets, giving the Moai a vivid gaze that signified awareness and vigilance. In that moment, the statue was no longer a silent object but a living guardian whose presence carried responsibility for the well-being of the community. The quarry at Reino Raraku became the heart of monumental production. Carvers worked in coordinated teams, shaping faces with long noses, heavy brows, and elongated ears that reflected cultural ideals of wisdom and nobility. Each curve and proportion followed traditions passed down through generations. Tools made of basalt chipped carefully against the softer volcanic stone, producing fine dust that settled quietly in the air. The slow pace of carving encouraged contemplation, reinforcing the sacred nature of the task. Some statues remained attached to the rock face for years before being released, suggesting that the process itself held ritual importance beyond mere efficiency. Transporting a finished moai required collective discipline and strategic planning. Oral traditions describe long lines of workers guiding ropes while chanting rhythmic commands to maintain synchronized movement. The ground was prepared in advance, smoothing pathways and reinforcing slopes. Whether the statues were rolled, dragged, or gently rocked upright, each successful journey strengthened social unity and reinforced belief in ancestral guidance. Accidents occasionally occurred, and some statues broke during transport, remaining where they fell as reminders of both ambition and vulnerability. These fallen figures still lie scattered across ancient roads, forming quiet milestones of human effort. As population increased, competition among clans intensified. Larger statues became symbols of prestige and spiritual dominance. The pressure to outbuild rivals placed increasing demands on natural resources. Forests were gradually cleared to supply materials for transportation, construction, and daily survival. Without tree roots to stabilize the soil, erosion accelerated, reducing agricultural productivity. Birds that once nested in the forests declined, and fishing became more difficult as canoe construction materials vanished. Environmental strain slowly reshaped the island's capacity to sustain its people. With scarcity came tension. Oral histories suggest periods of conflict marked by shifting alliances and social fragmentation. Some clans abandoned monument building entirely, while others defended their remaining resources with determination. The practice of toppling rival moai emerged as a symbolic rejection of spiritual authority, representing a loss of faith in the old systems that once unified the island. The statues that now lie face down across the landscape silently preserve this chapter of transformation and unrest. Yet even in decline, cultural adaptation continued. New belief systems emerged, including the Birdman cult, which shifted spiritual focus from ancestral monuments toward competitive rituals tied to seasonal cycles and survival. This transition reflects the resilience of human societies in the face of changing environmental and social pressures. Rather than disappearing entirely, the culture evolved, finding new ways to organize meaning and identity. Walking through the island today, one can sense these layered histories merging into a single quiet presence. The wind passes through tall grass where forests once stood. Waves echo against cliffs carved by centuries of tides. The moai remain still, yet their presence suggests motion through time rather than space. Each weathered face carries the memory of hands that shaped it, voices that guided it, and beliefs that sustained it. The island becomes a living archive, storing not only facts but emotional echoes of hope, struggle, and endurance. As evening approaches and shadows stretch across the land, the statues seem to grow taller in the fading light. Their calm expressions invite reflection rather than urgency. The mystery of their creation is not only a technical puzzle but a meditation on human aspiration and responsibility. In the quiet balance between stone and sky, between past and present, the story continues gently, preparing us to explore deeper questions about collapse, survival, and the enduring bond between people and their environment. Night settles slowly over Rapa Nui, and the air cools as the ocean breathes its steady rhythm against the darkened cliffs. The distant sound of waves blends with the soft movement of grass, creating a natural lullaby that seems to belong to the island itself. Under the starlit sky, the silhouettes of the moai appear even more timeless, their outlines merging gently with shadow and moonlight. In this quiet atmosphere, the imagination drifts backward through centuries, returning to the period when the island's balance began to shift in subtle but powerful ways. As natural resources became limited, daily life required greater ingenuity. Farmers adjusted planting methods, creating more stone-lined gardens to protect crops from wind and evaporation. Fishing strategies evolved as fewer trees meant fewer large canoes could be built. People relied increasingly on shoreline gathering, trapping smaller fish, collecting shellfish, and preserving food carefully. Community cooperation became essential for survival, reinforcing shared responsibility even as tensions quietly grew beneath the surface. Elders passed down practical knowledge with patience, reminding younger generations that discipline and restraint were as valuable as strength. The psychological impact of environmental change slowly influenced spiritual belief. When harvests weakened or storms damaged crops, people questioned whether ancestral protection had diminished. Some communities responded by building even larger moai, believing that greater effort would restore balance and favor. Others turned inward, emphasizing personal rituals and local guardians rather than monumental construction. Faith did not disappear, but it transformed in response to uncertainty, mirroring the adaptability of human thought under pressure. The Birdman tradition emerged during this period of transition. Once each year, competitors gathered at the cliffs overlooking the ocean and raced to retrieve the first egg laid by migratory seabirds on a nearby islet. The winner earned political and spiritual authority for the year, symbolizing renewal rather than ancestry. This ritual reflected a shift toward seasonal survival strategies and away from long-term monument building. The focus moved from stone permanence to living cycles of nature, acknowledging the island's changing realities. European contact introduced another profound transformation. When Dutch sailors arrived in 1722, they encountered a society already adapting to environmental limits. Although the first encounters were brief and cautious, they marked the beginning of an irreversible exchange between isolated culture and global forces. Subsequent visits by Spanish and British expeditions brought new materials, animals, and unfamiliar diseases. These interactions disrupted traditional systems and introduced challenges that the island had never faced before. In the 19th century, slave raids from South America devastated the population, removing many cultural leaders and knowledge keepers. Those who returned carried illness that further weakened the community. Missionary influence reshaped language, customs, and spiritual practices. The once isolated world of Rapa Nui became integrated into broader historical currents, accelerating cultural change while fragmenting ancient traditions. Many original stories were lost or altered during this period, deepening the mystery surrounding early Moai construction. Modern archaeology began slowly piecing together fragments of this lost history. Careful excavation revealed that many Moai have buried bodies extending deep into the earth, carved with petroglyphs and symbols. Soil analysis uncovered evidence of ancient agriculture and forest loss. Radiocarbon dating helped establish timelines of settlement, expansion, and ecological transformation. Each discovery added clarity while also revealing new layers of complexity. The island story resisted simple explanations, emphasizing interconnected causes rather than single dramatic events. Scientific experiments tested transport theories using replicas and rope techniques. Researchers demonstrated that upright statues could indeed be moved by coordinated rocking motions, validating oral traditions of walking statues. Other studies showed how tree loss could realistically occur through continuous harvesting and environmental vulnerability. These findings reinforced the idea that the Moai mystery reflects both human ingenuity and unintended consequence rather than supernatural intervention alone. Yet even with data and models, something intangible remains. Standing beside a Moai in silence creates an emotional resonance that no diagram can fully explain. The scale of human commitment, the patience of craftsmanship, and the depth of spiritual belief combine into a quiet awe that transcends logic. The statues invite not only analysis but contemplation, reminding observers that ancient societies were guided by values as rich and complex as those of the modern world. As moonlight drifts across the stone faces, the island seems to breathe memory into the night air. The Moai continue to watch, not as guardians of power, but as witnesses of transformation. Their presence encourages reflection on sustainability, cooperation, and humility. The mystery of Easter Island becomes a mirror for human civilization itself, gently asking how ambition can coexist with responsibility and how cultures can adapt without losing their core identity. The story now deepens further, moving toward the subtle lessons hidden within stone and silence, where history becomes a calm teacher rather than a distant record. The rhythm remains slow and steady, inviting rest while curiosity quietly continues. In the early hours before sunrise, a faint silver glow spreads across the horizon, softening the outlines of the island's hills and ancient platforms. The ocean reflects this pale light like a moving mirror, while the land remains still, holding centuries of memory beneath its quiet surface. The Moai stand unchanged, their stone faces carrying the calm dignity of endurance. In this gentle moment between night and day, the story of Rapa Nui continues to unfold with deeper clarity and quiet reflection. Archaeologists who carefully examined the island began to realize that the narrative of sudden collapse was too simple to explain such a complex society. Instead of a single catastrophic event, evidence pointed toward gradual adjustment, resilience, and adaptation. While forests declined and food sources shifted, the people reorganized their practices rather than vanishing entirely. Stone mulching techniques improved soil productivity. Coastal resource management became more structured. Social roles evolved to meet changing demands. These adaptations demonstrate that the Rapa Nui were not passive victims of environmental change but active problem solvers working within difficult limits. Many of the moai that appear partially buried were once assumed to be only heads. Later excavation revealed full torsos beneath layers of accumulated soil, sometimes decorated with intricate carvings representing birds, ceremonial paddles, and ancestral symbols. These hidden details emphasize how much of history remains concealed beneath time itself. Each uncovered symbol adds emotional depth rather than merely factual clarity, reminding researchers that the statues carried layered meanings beyond their visible surfaces. Preservation efforts in modern times focus on protecting both the statues and the fragile ecosystem that surrounds them. Weather, erosion, tourism, and rising sea levels continue to challenge conservation strategies. International collaboration seeks to balance access with respect, ensuring that the moai remain intact for future generations. Local communities participate actively in restoration, reconnecting with cultural heritage through education and stewardship. This renewed relationship between people and land reflects a quiet healing process after centuries of disruption. The moai also serve as a global lesson in sustainability. Scholars frequently reference Easter Island as a case study for resource management, social coordination, and ecological limits. Yet the island's story is not solely a warning. It is equally a testament to creativity, navigation skill, artistic devotion, and spiritual depth. The statues embody humanity's capacity to imagine beyond immediate survival and create meaning that endures long after voices fall silent. As sunlight gradually brightens the landscape, colors emerge softly from the earth and stone. Green grasses shimmer lightly in the breeze. The dark volcanic rock absorbs warmth, releasing it slowly back into the air. The statues seem almost alive in this changing light, their expressions shifting subtly as shadows move across their features. The environment itself becomes part of the narrative, reinforcing the intimate connection between people and place. Travelers who visit the island often describe a sense of calm that feels different from ordinary silence. It is not emptiness but presence. The absence of noise allows thought to slow and awareness to deepen. Many find themselves speaking more quietly, walking more gently, as if instinctively respecting an invisible boundary of time and memory. This atmosphere contributes to the island's enduring appeal and emotional resonance. The Moai mystery persists not because answers are entirely absent, but because meaning continues to evolve. Each generation interprets the statues through its own values and questions. For some, they represent technological achievement. For others, spiritual devotion or ecological caution. For many, they simply symbolize wonder, the quiet amazement that arises when human imagination meets natural endurance. As the day progresses and shadows shorten, the story reaches a reflective stillness. The statues remain, unchanged yet continually reinterpreted. The ocean continues its steady rhythm. The wind carries whispers of grass and distant waves. The island holds its memory gently, offering calm rather than urgency. In this peaceful balance, the moai stand not as riddles demanding resolution, but as companions to contemplation, inviting the mind to rest while curiosity remains softly awake. The journey through Easter Island's mystery now settles into a deeper calm, preparing the listener for the final closing movement, where silence itself becomes part of the story. As evening returns to the island, the sun slowly dips toward the ocean, painting the sky in gentle shades of pink, orange, and lavender. Shadows lengthen across the stone platforms, and the moai's faces appear softer, more contemplative. The air cools, carrying the faint scent of salt and volcanic earth, as if the island itself exhales a slow, measured breath. In this quiet, every sound, the whisper of wind, the distant crash of waves, the rustle of grasses, seems amplified, yet harmonized, forming a natural symphony that has played for centuries. It is here, in this transitional light, that the story of Rapa Nui's past reaches its reflective conclusion. The Moai stand as living witnesses to the entirety of human experience on the island. They observed the first Polynesian settlers as they arrived by canoe, the careful planting of crops, the organization of families and clans, and the creation of culture in isolation. They watched the rise of enormous statues, the struggles to transport them, and the ceremonies that infused them with spiritual significance. They remained silent as the forests thinned, as conflicts between clans reshaped society, and as rituals transformed to meet the challenges of survival. In every sense, the Moai embody the continuity of human aspiration, both fragile and enduring, fleeting and monumental. Visitors today sense the weight of these histories, not through explanation alone, but through the palpable presence of the statues themselves. Standing beside a Moai, one feels the scale of effort, patience, and devotion required to carve, transport, and raise a figure that could weigh tens of tons, all without modern machinery. The labor of countless hands, the discipline of coordinated groups, and the power of shared belief converge into forms that are at once artistic, functional, and spiritual. These figures are lessons written in stone, reminding us that culture, ingenuity, and faith can leave traces that endure long after individual lives have passed. Yet the mystery remains. How exactly were these enormous statues moved with such precision? Why were some left unfinished, and others deliberately toppled? How did a small island society balance ambition, environmental limits, and spiritual belief for centuries? Scholars, archaeologists, and local oral traditions provide pieces of the puzzle, but no single answer captures the full depth of the story. Instead, the mystery itself becomes part of the experience, inviting patience, reflection, and wonder. The ecological history of the island adds another layer to the narrative. Deforestation, soil erosion, and species decline illustrate the delicate balance between human society and natural resources. Rapa Nui's experience serves as a quiet lesson in sustainability and foresight, reminding us that even the most resourceful civilizations can face limits imposed by the environment. Yet the story is not only one of decline, it is also one of adaptation, resilience, and creativity, reflecting the human ability to invent solutions in the face of challenges. The island's cultural history, too, is a story of evolution. From the ancestral Moai traditions to the Birdman cult and later interactions with Europeans, Rapa Nui society demonstrates the flexibility of human belief and practice. Traditions were adapted, rituals transformed, and knowledge preserved in forms that could survive sudden disruptions. Even as population decline and external pressures threatened continuity, the core values of community, spiritual respect, and careful observation of nature persisted, leaving traces that remain visible in stone, song, and story. As night deepens, the Moai seem to merge with the darkness, their forms silhouetted against the glimmering stars. Silence reigns, yet it is not empty. Each statue resonates with centuries of memory, the laughter of children, the rhythm of chants, the careful chiseling of stone, the cautious footsteps of villagers. It is a layered soundscape that exists beyond hearing, felt instead in stillness and presence. The island, the statues, and the history they embody coexist in a timeless dialogue, accessible not through hurry or explanation, but through patient observation and calm contemplation. In this quiet, one understands the true significance of the Moai. They are not merely monuments to the past, but active participants in an ongoing story of humanity and nature, ambition and restraint, faith and creativity. They teach that history is living, that memory is layered, and that mystery can inspire reverence rather than frustration. The calm of the island, the continuity of the statues, and the gentle rhythm of wind and waves invite reflection, offering a rare space where the mind can wander safely through time while the body rests in the present. As this long narrative concludes, the listener is left with a sense of completion that is both soothing and expansive. The story of Easter Island's Moai, from arrival to adaptation, from creation to mystery, has unfolded slowly, allowing understanding to grow gradually, like the gentle unfolding of dawn. In this space, one can pause, breathe, and appreciate the endurance of human effort, the depth of belief, and the subtle balance of life in a place so remote yet so rich in history. The Moai remain, silent yet alive, eternal companions to curiosity, reflection, and calm. As the night deepens over Easter Island, the soft moonlight washes across the grasslands and volcanic rocks. Each Moai stands in silence, their shadow stretching long across the uneven ground. The wind carries a faint scent of salt and damp earth, and the distant ocean produces a rhythmic lullaby that never stops. The quiet is profound, yet alive, as if the island itself remembers every footstep, every chant, every stroke of a chisel that shaped these colossal stones centuries ago. Sitting beside a moai, one feels the weight of history not as a burden but as a gentle embrace, a connection that spans generations. The statues' elongated heads and heavy brows seem to watch with patience, as though they understand the passage of time more than any living being. Long ago, when Polynesian settlers first arrived, they faced a daunting and unfamiliar environment. Dense forests once covered parts of the island, but they had to carefully choose areas to plant sweet potatoes, taro, bananas, and other crops. Each planting involved the calculation of sunlight, soil quality, and seasonal rainfall. They watched the ocean for changes in currents and the behavior of birds, which indicated where fish might gather. Every action was guided by observation and experience, creating a society deeply attuned to the rhythms of nature. The moai were not just spiritual symbols, they were a reflection of this careful attention, each statue representing the watchful eyes of ancestors who guided the living in matters both mundane and sacred. In these quiet nights, one can almost hear the whispered instructions of ancient carvers, coordinating their teams in soft chants while shaping the volcanic tuff of Reino Raraku. Each stroke of the basalt tool produced fine dust that floated in the air, sparkling faintly in the moonlight. The work was slow and deliberate, almost meditative, reinforcing the sacred nature of the task. Even the unfinished moai, lying half-formed in the quarry, seemed to hold stories of days when laughter, conversation, and devotion filled the air. They are remnants not only of stonework but of community, of shared effort, and of a belief system that connected the physical with the spiritual. Transporting a moai across the island was a feat of both ingenuity and faith. Teams coordinated their movements with careful timing, chanting in unison to maintain rhythm. The ground had to be prepared, paths cleared, and slopes reinforced. Trees were used not only as rollers but as part of the ritual, each movement seen as a dance between human strength and ancestral guidance. Imagine walking beside a figure weighing tens of tons, slowly swaying, inching forward, the effort synchronized through generations of learned knowledge. These journeys could take weeks, sometimes months, yet the moai always reached their platforms upright, testament to human patience and collective focus. As centuries passed, the island's environment changed, slowly, almost imperceptibly. Trees thinned, soil eroded, and bird populations declined. The Rapa Nui adapted through ingenuity, adjusting crop techniques, organizing resource management, and creating new rituals like the Birdman competition to maintain social cohesion. Even in times of tension and scarcity, culture persisted. Communities learned to navigate challenges with careful planning, preserving their identity and knowledge. The moai, both completed and fallen, silently witnessed these adaptations, marking triumphs, struggles, and transformations over time. Now, walking along the cliffs in the cool night, one can imagine the ocean waves as a slow, continuous heartbeat of the island. Stars above seem almost within reach, mirrored by the calm waters. The moai, though still, carry with them an energy of centuries, the strength of hands that carved them, the devotion of workers who moved them, and the faith of generations who believed in the power of ancestors. Each figure is layered with meaning, a reminder that human ambition, combined with patience and care, can leave a mark that lasts far beyond individual lives. In this expanded journey, the listener is invited to slow down completely. Every detail, the rustle of grass, the distant call of seabirds, the faint scent of earth and salt, adds to the calm, extending the narrative and immersing the mind fully. Small pauses between sentences, reflective observations, and vivid imagery create space for thought, making time stretch naturally toward hours of gentle listening. The island, the moai, and the stories they embody become companions in quiet reflection, guiding the mind through history at a pace that encourages rest, curiosity, and awe. As the night deepens further, the island takes on a mysterious glow, and the moai cast elongated shadows across the gently sloping hills. The ocean's waves lap softly against the volcanic rocks, each pulse a quiet heartbeat of this remote land. In the stillness, it is easy to imagine the first Polynesian settlers stepping onto these shores, their small canoes bobbing with the rhythm of the waves, carrying seeds, tools, and the weight of hope for a new home. They must have felt both fear and awe, the vastness of the sea behind them, the unknown ahead, and the promise of fertile land that could sustain life if they respected it. Life on the island required meticulous attention. Every action, from planting crops to collecting freshwater, demanded observation and foresight. Families learned which areas of soil retained moisture, which slopes were safe from erosion, and which winds would carry the seeds. The Moai were more than guardians, they were symbols of this harmony. By facing the inland villages, they watched over the crops, the homes, and the people themselves, embodying the idea that human effort and spiritual guidance were intertwined. Each statue, though silent, represented a living conversation between past and present, a reminder of responsibility, continuity, and patience. The process of carving a moai was itself a ritual. Teams worked in harmony, each stroke of the basalt chisel measured and intentional. Dust hung in the air, catching the soft light, and the rhythmic sound of chiseling mingled with distant ocean waves. Carvers communicated through subtle gestures, songs, and chants, creating not just a statue but a shared experience that bound the community together. Every decision, how to shape the nose, the ears, the shoulders, was influenced by tradition and spirituality. Even unfinished statues at Reino Raraku speak to the slow unfolding of knowledge, the passing of time, and the sacred patience required to create something meant to endure for centuries. Transporting the moai was a test of coordination, faith, and endurance. Workers used ropes, wooden sleds, and carefully planned paths to move the statues across uneven terrain. Some statues were walked upright in a rocking motion, a process that required precise timing and communal focus. Each journey took weeks or months, and the physical strain was immense, yet the task was more than mechanical, it was ceremonial. The act of moving a statue symbolized unity, respect for ancestors, and belief in the protective power of the figures themselves. When finally erected on their ahu, each moai transformed from stone into a living presence, infused with mana that connected the people with their ancestors. As generations passed, the environmental pressures grew. Trees were cleared, soil eroded, and species disappeared. Fishing and agriculture required careful management, leading to social innovations and new rituals like the Birdman competition. This adaptation demonstrates a profound understanding of sustainability and human ingenuity. Even amid scarcity and tension, the people of Rapa Nui found ways to continue, adjusting their beliefs, practices, and society to match the changing world around them. The moai, both standing and fallen, silently witnessed these transformations, embodying centuries of adaptation and survival. The interplay between human ambition and nature's limits became evident in both the grandeur of the moai and the vulnerability of the island. Standing beside a fallen statue, one feels the immense effort it took to create and move it, the skill involved in planning, and the community coordination that made it possible. The fallen figures are not failures but markers of a complex society responding to changing circumstances. They remind us that human achievement is never isolated from the environment that supports it, and that respect for natural limits is essential to the endurance of culture. Now, under the soft starlight, the moai seem almost alive, their stone faces reflecting the calm majesty of the island. The wind whispers through the grass, carrying faint echoes of chants, footsteps, and the careful rhythms of life long past. Time feels stretched and fluid. The listener is invited to slow down completely, to allow the mind to wander through the layers of history, environment, and spirituality, understanding that the story is not just about stone but about people, belief, and the delicate balance between action and patience. Every detail of this night, the gentle waves, the shimmering stars, the quiet breath of grass, the distant hum of the volcano's slopes, adds depth and richness to the narrative. Pauses between words, reflections on the environment, and vivid sensory descriptions extend the story naturally. The listener drifts alongside the island's history, experiencing the past in a way that is calm, immersive, and meditative, preparing the mind and body for rest while curiosity gently remains awake. As the first light of dawn begins to soften the horizon, the island seems to exhale a slow, measured breath. Shadows shrink and the contours of volcanic hills, crater lakes, and grassy plains become visible in gentle shades of gold and green. The moai, standing on their ahu platforms, catch the early sunlight on their stoic faces, revealing textures and details often invisible in the moonlight. At this quiet hour, one can almost hear the whispered echoes of history, the careful movements of carvers, the coordinated chants of those transporting statues, and the subtle conversations of villagers planning their day. Every motion, every sound from centuries past, seems preserved in the calm atmosphere of the island. European contact brought profound and lasting change. In 1722, Dutch explorers were the first outsiders to document the island and its statues in detail. They recorded astonishment at the sheer scale of the Moai and the apparent ingenuity of a society with limited resources. Later European visits introduced new animals, new tools, and tragically, new diseases. These interactions, though brief initially, began a transformation that would ripple through every aspect of Rapa Nui society. Communities adapted to sudden challenges, modifying rituals, social hierarchies, and daily practices to survive while retaining the essence of ancestral beliefs. The Moai, however, remained steadfast, silent witnesses to the unfolding changes. In the 19th century, the island experienced dramatic upheavals. Slave raids removed many of the leaders and knowledge keepers, and epidemics further reduced the population. Traditional knowledge, navigation, agriculture, ceremonial practices, was lost in part. Missionaries introduced new belief systems, and local customs evolved under external pressures. Yet even in these difficult times, the Moai continued to stand as enduring symbols of cultural memory. Their presence reminded the people of their ancestors, their resilience, and the continuity of life despite sudden disruptions. Modern archaeological research has shed light on many aspects of the Moai and Rapa Nui society, but mysteries remain. Excavations at Reino Raraku reveal partially buried statues with intricate carvings on their torsos. Radiocarbon dating confirms centuries of settlement, agricultural adaptation, and environmental change. Experiments replicating statue transport show that coordinated walking techniques were feasible, validating local oral traditions. Each discovery deepens understanding, yet also emphasizes how complex, interconnected, and sophisticated the island society was. Even now, the Moai inspire reflection on sustainability and human responsibility. The gradual deforestation and soil erosion that challenged ancient Rapa Nui communities illustrate how natural resources are integral to the survival of society. Yet the creativity, planning, and cultural strength displayed by the islanders show that adaptation is possible when knowledge, community, and careful observation guide human action. Standing among these statues, one sees lessons not only from the past but also for the present and future. As the day grows brighter, the ocean glitters with soft ripples. The grass sways gently, and the sound of distant seabirds punctuates the stillness. The Moai, some upright, some fallen, continue to convey stories of devotion, patience, and endurance. They are more than monuments, they are guardians of memory, teaching lessons about cooperation, belief, and the quiet persistence of culture. Each figure is a marker of time, effort, and faith, encouraging the observer to move slowly, breathe deeply, and absorb history in a reflective, meditative manner. By mid-morning, the island's environment itself seems to tell a story. The interplay of light and shadow across the hills, the gentle rustle of foliage, and the distant hum of waves form a living backdrop to human endeavor. The narrative of Easter Island is not static, it is experienced in this interaction of people, stone, and nature. The Moai remind us that human creations endure best when aligned with natural rhythms, that culture is fragile yet resilient, and that history, when approached slowly and thoughtfully, offers not only knowledge but calm understanding. Every moment spent observing the statues and the island environment reinforces the immersive nature of this calm history journey. Small details, a crack in a statue's surface, the soft reflection of sunlight on volcanic rock, the distant flight of a bird, serve to slow the mind and heighten awareness. Pauses in narration, reflective observations, and vivid descriptions of environment and activity create space for contemplation. The story expands naturally in both scope and time, allowing the listener to drift through centuries at a meditative pace, experiencing the Moai as both historical artifacts and living witnesses. As the afternoon sun moves gently across the sky, the island seems to slow its pace. Shadows lengthen across the plains, and the fallen Moai lie in quiet repose, their massive faces partially buried in the earth. These statues, once upright and proud, now rest with an air of solemn dignity. Each toppled figure carries a story, not of defeat, but of transition, of the ebb and flow of human ambition and societal change. One can imagine the careful hands that carved them, the unified effort that transported them, and the moments of tension and rivalry that may have led to their intentional toppling. They are not simply remnants of failure, they are markers of adaptation, caution, and human complexity. Walking among the fallen statues, the texture of the stone tells its own story. Erosion has softened edges, moss and lichen cling to surfaces, and faint carvings hint at details long obscured. The ground is uneven, shaped by centuries of wind, rain, and foot traffic. Birds occasionally land on the statues, a gentle reminder that nature reclaims space slowly yet persistently. The combination of natural beauty and human creation produces a meditative environment. Observers are invited to slow their pace, let their minds wander, and feel the subtle pulse of history vibrating through the land and stone alike. Cultural evolution continued even as the island's population changed. After European contact, the traditional Moai-centered belief system gradually transformed, and new practices like the Birdman cult became central to society. These shifts reflected adaptive responses to environmental pressures, resource scarcity, and the disruptions caused by outsiders. The people of Rapa Nui learned to integrate new knowledge while retaining key aspects of ancestral identity, demonstrating resilience and creativity. By observing both standing and fallen Moai, one can trace the arc of cultural continuity and change, understanding that societies evolve through both triumphs and challenges. Modern preservation efforts focus on protecting the statues while respecting the sacredness of the island. Restoration projects aim to raise fallen Moai, repair erosion, and prevent further damage from weather and human activity. Conservation teams work alongside local communities to ensure that the Moai continue to stand as symbols of cultural heritage. Each restored statue represents not only the skill of ancient carvers but also the collaborative commitment of present-day people to honor history responsibly. These efforts remind us that history is not static, it requires care, attention, and reverence to remain meaningful. In this quiet reflection, the Moai become teachers. They convey lessons about patience, perseverance, and the interconnectedness of human action and the natural environment. Observing their silent gaze encourages mindfulness, urging the listener to consider the impact of their choices on both society and nature. The enduring presence of the statues demonstrates that even in the face of scarcity, conflict, and change, cultural achievement and spiritual vision can survive, providing guidance for future generations. As evening approaches, the light softens once more, and the landscape is bathed in a warm glow. The interplay of shadow and sunlight across the Moai and volcanic hills creates a visual rhythm that mirrors the narrative rhythm of history. Each detail, the subtle curve of a statue's cheek, the faint inscription on a buried torso, the sway of grass around its base, invites careful attention and reflection. These slow observations extend the story naturally, making time stretch and allowing the listener to become fully immersed in both the physical and spiritual dimensions of the island. By the end of the day, the story of Easter Island's Moai leaves a sense of calm and reverence. The statues, both upright and fallen, connect the past with the present. They remind us of the ingenuity, patience, and spiritual depth of the people who built them. They also teach lessons about the fragility of ecosystems, the necessity of cooperation, and the enduring power of culture. In this quiet space, one can rest while absorbing centuries of history, imagination, and reflection, fully experiencing the slow, immersive journey through time on this remote island. As the final light of day fades and dusk settles over Easter Island, a profound calm envelopes the landscape. The Moai stand and lie quietly, their stone faces reflecting the subtle hues of sunset, soft oranges, pale pinks, and muted purples blending into the horizon. The gentle rustle of grass and the distant, rhythmic pulse of the ocean create a natural cadence, as if the island itself is breathing slowly. In this serene moment, the history of Rapa Nui, stretching across centuries, feels tangible, as though the land and stone are whispering their stories directly to the observer. The Moai, now fully understood as both monumental works of art and spiritual anchors, continue to symbolize human aspiration, ingenuity, and devotion. Each figure carries the memory of hands that carved them, voices that chanted as they were transported, and the faith of a community that believed in the guardianship of their ancestors. They remind us that every achievement, every cultural expression, requires patience, collaboration, and respect for both people and nature. These lessons remain timeless, extending beyond the island to all who witness their quiet power. Modern observers and visitors to Rapa Nui often describe a unique experience, a sense of slow time and reflective presence. Walking among the Moai, hearing the soft murmur of the sea, feeling the breeze on one's skin, and observing shadows shift across the volcanic hills, one becomes part of a narrative that is both historical and deeply personal. The statues invite mindfulness and contemplation, offering the rare opportunity to absorb the weight of history without urgency or distraction. Here, time stretches naturally, aligning with the calm pace of life that once guided the island's inhabitants. The story of Easter Island's Moai also speaks to resilience and adaptation. Despite environmental pressures, societal changes, and the arrival of outsiders, the culture evolved, finding new ways to survive and express belief. The Birdman cult, shifts in social structure, and eventual collaboration with modern conservation efforts demonstrate the capacity of human societies to respond creatively to challenges. Even as some statues fell and forests disappeared, knowledge, ingenuity, and spiritual vision endured, embodied in the stone and echoed in the rhythms of the island. As night fully descends, stars emerge across the sky, mirrored by the calm, dark ocean that surrounds the island. The Moai seem to merge with the cosmos, their silent gaze connecting the past, present, and future. In this quiet vastness, the listener is invited to reflect, to breathe, and to rest, knowing that these ancient figures hold stories of endurance, community, and devotion. The mystery of their creation and purpose continues to inspire curiosity, but now it does so without urgency, only wonder, calm, and gentle contemplation. The final lesson of Easter Island is subtle yet profound. Human effort, when combined with patience, cooperation, and reverence for nature, can leave a legacy that transcends time. The Moai are not simply monuments, they are companions in reflection, teaching us to move slowly, think deeply, and act responsibly. They invite the mind to wander safely through history while the body rests in the present. Their stillness is alive, their silence full of meaning, and their presence enduring. As this journey concludes, the island and its statues fade softly from awareness, leaving the listener with a lasting sense of peace, curiosity, and connection to human history. The Moai continue to watch over the land, guardians of memory and teachers of reflection, inviting all who observe them to slow down, breathe deeply, and carry the calm of Rapa Nui into their own lives. Good night, dear listener. Let your thoughts drift gently across the island, through centuries of history, and into the quiet calm of the Moai's enduring presence. Good night, dear listener. Let your mind drift among the waves, the stars, and the stone faces, carrying with it the slow, enduring rhythm of Rapa Nui, and rest in the timeless calm of Easter Island.